Hi everyone. In this tutorial we're going to be talking about 3D Studio Max. This is an introductory training for all users that doesn't know exactly how to work on 3D Max. We're going to go into the interface of 3D Max and talk about the shortcuts and how to navigate and move along with 3D Max. First of all, as you can see, the top area, which are the menu bar, it's a bit similar to all Autodesk users. So you can go to the application tab in here, you can go to a new file, reset my current file, open a file from an existing previous saved file, or I can save or save as to several places, okay, or I can save a selection, I can import object into Max, or I can export object from Max into other applications. I can send to, which is something very handy later on for users that use different softwares. I can send to Maya, to Self-Image, to Motion Builder, or to Mudbox. Okay, and definitely I have properties, manage, and references in here. And other than that, I have the tools, which are the menu bars in here. That's a very common thing, and definitely I have my shortcuts in here, which is the new, open, save, undo, and redo, and my workspace. On the other hand, I have my help, okay, and everything that's related to online. My area that concerns me in here is this tab, okay. These are the shortcuts icons that's we're going to be using in Max. I'm sure if you open Max for the first time, you're not going to have all these icons. You might have only this icon in here, these icons up till this teapot, okay. So later on you can open several items in here. You can right click in here and you can open whatever you want to work with. Definitely if you don't know what are these, don't open them. Okay, so these are the shortcut icons in here. We're going to go through them later on and talk about the basics, what we're going to be using. On the right side we have the control panel. The control panel is the heart of Max. Basically, this is a very important menu in here and very huge. It looks simple, but it's basically huge. You can go to the Create tab. It's divided into Creation, which is the Create tab in here, Modification, everything I need to modify after I create it, I can modify it. Third, I can work with the hierarchy, especially I can move my pivot point from a place to another, which is the point of action. Motion tab, which is concerning anything which is in animation. Display tab, I can display things by categories. I can hide, unhide, freeze, unfreeze, and do my options which is related to display. And the last thing is utilities, which are the plugins and which are in Max. So I'm going to go to the first tab, which is Create. And in here I have several options. I can create many options. First of all, I can create geometry, I can create shapes, I can create lights, cameras, helpers, space wraps, and systems. In each category, let's say geometry, I can work with standard primitives or extended primitives, compound object, and so on. So you can see if I change this to standard primitives, I can have a box, a sphere, and so on. Let's say pyramid, tube. If I change to extended primitives, I have something different. If I change to compound object, I have something even different. And whatever I do, I have different stuff. And that goes for the same thing for the others. Shapes, lights, cameras, helpers, space wraps, and systems. So, third area, it's the lower area. It's basically concerning a few things. First of all, there's my timeline, which is related to animation if I have later on animations. So this is basically my timeline. It says 0 to 100. That's the default. It's not seconds, it's not minutes, it's just simply frames. We're going to be talking about that later on. Other than that, we can see these icons in here. First of all, I have my X, Y, and Z axes, where these represents move, rotate, and scale in each for each object. I can also isolate my object, I can lock it, okay, and I can change my absolute mode into an object. That's the third thing in here. There's the grid. That's my scale. My scale in here says 25.4 centimeter. which is this small box in here. Each one of those, it's 25.4 by 25.4. In your case, if you were using the max for the first time, it will says grid equal at 10, and that's it. We're going to talk about changing the unit setup later on. Then we have the keys, keying area for animation, and play buttons and settings for the animation, and we have my navigation tool in here. The fourth area is the navigation and actually the viewports. I have 4 viewports in Max. They says in here top, front, perspective, and left. If I want to maximize either of these viewports, I can just press my shortcut Alt W, and then if I want to minimize it back, Alt W. I can do that by pressing on this plus sign in here. I can go maximize viewport and then restore viewport. I can do the same for each one of those viewports. So that will help me to view my object a bit in a clearer, or maybe I need to view in four views. So I'm gonna just move this. I'm gonna enlarge my viewport and then start talking about navigation. If I want to move my camera or my perspective viewport, I can press, my shortcuts are middle click to pan. I can scroll my mouse in and out to zoom in and out, and I can press Alt middle click to orbit. I can use the orbiting by using this view. So this cube in here, it comes in handy sometimes. I can just click and drag so I can move my view. I can press on the left, I can view a left perspective view, and then I can shift my views in here. As you can see, back, left, front, right. I can go top, then go to bottom maybe. Okay, I can shift my views by rotating in here my views, and then I can press on this to go back to perspective. I can also use the navigations in here. For example, I can press on zoom, click and drag to zoom in and out. I can use my orbit. I can click and drag to orbit. So that's the same thing in here. And I can also middle click to pan. So I can use these shortcuts, or I can use these shortcuts in here, all the Alt, middle click to pan, and scroll in and out to zoom in. So now I'm going to create a few objects. To create objects, I'm going to go to create, geometry, and I'm going to start using some objects. Let's say a box. When I created the box, I create the box, and then I go to the modify tab, and in here I can access all its parameters. For example, its length, its width, its height. For example, I need 100 centimeters by 100 centimeters by 200 centimeters height. Second thing, I have the segments. Segments are actually like divisions inside any object that will add more details, especially for modeling later on. So I'm going to add a bit of segments, okay, which doesn't make really sense. Nothing is going to happen for this box. But if I created, let's say, a sphere, and I go to the modify tab, I have the radius and I have segments in here. If I go low, let's say 4, the minimum, I would end up having this kind of sphere. And the more I add segments, the more I'm going to add details, and the more smoother this sphere is going to be. Okay, so each object you create, it has its own parameters. For example, a sphere, it has something different. Let's say a hemisphere, I can cut this sphere in whatever percentages, from 0 to 1, from 0 to 100%. I can slice it on from left to right or right to left, however I want. Okay, it depends on the object I'm working with. So all I'm gonna do, actually I'm gonna create a box, whatever size I want, and I'm gonna start working with my navigation. So I'm gonna go my transforms. Transforms are basically move, rotate, scale, and definitely select. The shortcuts for these are Q for selection, which is this icon, W, which is move, E, which is rotate, and R, which is scale. And where we go, Q, W, E, R. Q, W, E, R. Okay, if I want to select objects, and I'm going to create several objects, let's say torus, a teapot, and maybe a cylinder. Okay. If I created few objects in here, and I want to select them all, I can definitely just click and drag to select all. If I want to select one by one, I select the first one, let's say the teapot, I press Ctrl. As you can see on my cursor, there's a plus sign now. So I can add to selection. And if I want to subtract from selection, I press Alt. You can look on my cursor, I press Alt. There's a minus now. I can subtract selection from my, actually subtract from my selection. I can definitely do an addition by Alt, let's say for subtraction, and do a marquee selection. I'm going to subtract all these objects except this, or definitely I can press Ctrl and select a group selection to add into my selection. So that's going to be my selections. If you can see in here, if you go to selection, there's the other tab in here which says rectangular selection region. By default it's rectangular. If you press Q, and when you have already this selected, this selection marquee changes. And as you can see, I can press in here and hold 1 second, because there's this arrow which means there's objects or options inside. So I can change my marquee selection from rectangular to circular to a line to a spline or to a paint. Actually, most of the time you're going to use this, but maybe by mistake you just have this kind of selection and you're annoyed from it. Just make sure you can press in here and select the marquee selection which says rectangular, or by pressing the shortcut Q. As you can see in here, it's changing by pressing Q. Okay, now I'm going to select these objects, I'm going to delete them, select the box, and now I'm going to go to move. If I go to move, I can press, you can see the gizmos in here, and these gizmos represent the move tool. I can make the gizmo larger or smaller by pressing the plus sign or the minus sign, making it larger or smaller depending on how you like it. So if I want to move this box, I can press on any axis, for example y-axis or x-axis or z-axis. Make sure you don't press in the middle, because it's going to go on whatever axis it wants, and sometimes it's going to be a bit annoying. I can also move it on two axes snapped together, let's say in this case ZY, or in this case XZ or XY. Sorry, this is XY. So I can move it in whatever axis. And now, if I want to move it on measurement maybe, or something very precise, I have two ways. Either by right-clicking on the Move tab, and I get my transform type in. Okay, and here it says on the absolute word XYZ, which is representing to this point 0, 0, 0, center of origin. Okay, this object is moving minus 8.53 centimeter on x-axis, which is this axis backward, minus 116 point whatever on the y-axis, which is this axis backward, and on the z it's a plus 50, which is going on this axis forward towards the arrow. If I want to move this on the y-axis this way, maybe 5 centimeters, I have to calculate this number and add plus 5 to this, or I can use the offset word. The offset word, it's based on its pivot point. Wherever you go, this object will move depending on the absolute word, depending on this point, but on the offset word, it's always on its own origin. So if I want to move this 5 centimeters on a positive y, so this angle, this way, I can just press in here and press 5 centimeters. Enter, and it will move my 5 centimeters, and then it will go back to 0 and will do the calculation for me in here. That's really sometimes comes in handy. So that goes for the movement. The other way I can do it by basically the same in here. If I do right click in here, that's the absolute word, and you can see the same numbers in here for XYZ in here, XYZ. I can change the numbers in here if I want, or I can change the numbers in here if I want. And if I press on this icon, I will shift from absolute word to offset word. And now I can add, let's say on the Z axis, let's say minus 20 centimeter, that will move the box downward 20 centimeters. Enter, and that's it. As you can see, the Z axis will go back to 0, but now in here it will do the calculations. So Now we're done with the move tool, and I'm gonna go, let's say, back to absolute world and go to 0, 0, 0, center of origin, and now we're back here. If I want to do the same thing actually for rotation, I'm gonna go here, rotate, or press the E key. So if you go on the rotate, this is the gizmo for rotate. Definitely I can go make it larger or smaller, and I can move my box depending on which axis I want. And just make sure, just press on the axis I want to move and not in the middle, because it will move on all axes, which sometimes will not be a good thing. If I want to go in a type in, definitely the same thing. I can right click in here and I have my absolute word and offset word for the rotation. And definitely in here, that shifts from move, and now it's going to rotate. If I go to scale now, same thing goes in here. If I do a right click in here, same thing for transform, type in, and definitely in here shifts from move to rotate to now scale, depending on what kind of gizmo I have in here or selection. So this will change from move to rotate and now to scale. That's it for move, rotate, and scale. And now I'm gonna just do a copy. To copy an object, I can do it in two ways in Max. First of all, I can press Ctrl V, which will actually copy and paste the object in its place. It will ask me to, if I want to copy this object or make it as an instance or reference. Copy is basically copying the object, and they will look the same, but that's it. It's just a copy. If I choose instance, they will share the same parameter. If I change the parameter of the first one, it will change the parameter of the second, or maybe more. I've already instanced them. In this case, I'm gonna go copy, and okay. So as you can see, nothing happened. Actually, what happened is this object is copied and placed on the same position. So I can copy more and more and more. That's the first way. The second way to copy is basically by using the shift key. Select an object, press shift, and keep pressing shift, and press on the axis you want to move. Let's say Y, click and drag, and then you copy it. So if I want to copy half this distance, I just release my click, and I got the same options, copy, instance, or reference. I'm gonna go copy, but the only difference in here, it will ask me in one more question, number of copies. For example, I want to make 5 copies. So it's gonna do this copy 5 times, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and they have the same distance between them, which comes really handy for certain places. I can also do the copy in here, for example, on rotate. Shift and drag, I can copy on rotation, and I can copy on scale. Shift and drag, and as you can see, I copied it, but smaller size. I can do the copy with using shift by using the move tool, rotate tool, or scale tool. I'm gonna pause this video now, and I'm gonna stop this here. We're gonna be talking about later stuff on the other video because we're running out of time. So in the next video, we're gonna be talking about snapping and a bit about modeling and a few other stuff to get started. Basically getting ready to get started for modeling, texturing, lighting, and rendering, and then animation. Thank you for listening, and have a good day.